Hello, Uta here. With these irises called Dracula's Kiss, and I just realized that this basket-shaped vase is exactly for the blooms that fall off without much of a stem, which does happen with these kind of big bearded irises. And here are a few, two or three of my immortality white irises in a bowl. And, they are a little bit ephemeral. I have the yellow garden irises and some more of the Dracula's Kiss back there. And I decided when it looked like it was going to rain last night, I had better cut some of these because a lot of times the rain kind of finishes them. Now, you might notice that I'm looking a little worse for wear. It's allergies. I don't have a cold, but I don't stop going outside even though the cottonwood trees are blooming and all of that fluff is drifting around. But I'm very excited about all of the progress in the garden, and I will start filming out there uh, in a week or so, I think. Okay, so this is very interesting how the document on pediatric gender transition, is that what they call it? Pediatric medical transition, PMT, they called it, from the U.S. Health and Human Services Department. I'm going to read some parts from starting from page 41, where the history of uh, George, that is who in 1952 or 53 renamed himself Christine Jorgensen, uh, kind of flowed into this whole business about the idea that we have to give kids puberty blockers and interfere with normal adolescence. Because if you do that, then the adults who want to be the opposite sex, who ideate an opposite sex persona, will, according to these certain practitioners, they will pass better and therefore be happier. Now, the thing is, I don't see how they can be happier because they still will be infertile and they will still have to tell their truth, their true reality, not their lived experiences or their individual truth, which is false to the rest of us. But they will have to tell anyone who becomes close to them, and anyone who is part of their family will know that they are actually their biological sex and that you cannot change sex. So this is kind of interesting because for some reason, in the post-war period, this Christine, formerly George Jorgensen, sought out a lot of publicity and got a lot of publicity. I guess it was the click value. That's the deal. The value of the clicks by the Hearst press, publisher organization. So let's see. His in in the actual articles that were written about Christine Jorgensen, of course, they were using female pronouns, but I'm editing them and using biologically correct pronouns. Uh, his celebrity began in December of 1952 when a banner headline screamed, XGI becomes blonde beauty. Operations transform Bronx youth. Greeted the readers of the New York Daily News. Hearst Publications, popular Sunday newspaper supplement, American Weekly, subsequently paid $20,000. Somebody look up for me what the current present day 2025 value would be of $20,000 from 1952. That's a lot of money. Probably something like $1 million, I would imagine. Okay, $20,000 for an exclusive interview with Jorgensen that brought his story to millions of American homes and whetted the appetite of the world press. When he returned to the United States in 1953, an unprecedented 300 reporters were on hand to meet his plane at New York International Airport. His sex change was viewed by many as a miracle of God, in which not Christ, but Christine, man reborn as woman, heralded a new dispensation of human history. Jorgensen met Harry Benjamin in New York that year, and they enjoyed a long friendship. In a 1965 letter just before the publication of Benjamin's The Transsexual Phenomenon book, he wrote, this is Benjamin wrote, "Without you, Christine, none of this would have happened." Yeah, interesting, because looking to the next part, it looks like he was simply a gay man, and being gay in the 1940s and 1950s was unacceptable. Growing up in the Bronx, the young George was teased for his girlish qualities and was greatly conflicted by his homosexuality. One question was specifically troubling for George. He had learned at church and from his school friends that homosexual relationships were considered sinful and immoral. In the Jorgensen household, the word was never spoken. Among his neighbors, homos or queers were thought to be, and that was in quotes, homos in quotes and queers in quotes, were thought to be unacceptable, even dangerous people. And therefore, a series of romantic attractions to other young men became his greatest teenage conflict. Try as he might to avoid these crushes, George persistently fell in love with other male youths of his age. This conflict would contribute to episodes of depression, low self-esteem, low aspiration for success, and much personal unhappiness. We could call these comorbidities. Let me repeat that. Depression, low self-esteem, low aspiration for success, and much personal unhappiness. George himself fixated on a hormonal explanation for his femininity and same-sex attraction, a glandular imbalance, and was also wrongly convinced that his genitals were underdeveloped. And this plays into the use of the term intersex in trans world instead of the more correct current term of disorders of sexual development. It is a plausible conjecture that George found an English translation of Lily Alba's autobiography. That is, Lily Alba was the disastrous case of a male, and they tried these surgeries, and he died of sepsis in a really horrific way. And that film, The Danish Girl, was about Lily Alba. And they say, in quotes, hoping to find other keys to my dilemma. So apparently he hunted around in the library shelves at the New York City libraries looking for keys to his dilemma. In any event, in search of the hormonal and surgical treatment he felt he needed, he went to Denmark on a one-way ticket in 1950. There, the Bronx youth became a patient of Christian Hamburger, a Copenhagen endocrinologist. Now, I'm just going to mention that all of these doctors saw this very unhappy, probably gay man as their ticket to fame. Perhaps Hamburger felt a special compassion for homosexuals because his sister was a lesbian. Despite Denmark's comparatively liberal national policies, Hamburger surely knew that his sister's experience of discrimination against gays and lesbians could be profoundly troubling. He could offer no medical intervention to help his sister, but he believed there might be some steps he could take to help George Jorgensen, and he was willing to try. Oh, just a note, I believe that George is the English name cognate of Jorgen in Danish, and so his name was basically George, son of George. um, in a case report he later wrote for the Journal of the American Medical Association, which is known as JAMA, Hamburger described George's desire with medical assistance to be able to obtain permission to live on as nearly a woman as possible. Hamburger prescribed estrogen, and George's application for castration to the Danish Ministry of Justice was approved in 1951. My note in this, I wrote all of this up on my blog. I'm reading a combination of my comments and page, I think, 41 to 47 from the HHS document. And I'm noting that without a doubt Jorgensen was taking Premarin, the estrogen obtained from the urine of pregnant mares, Premarin, for pregnant mare urine. These poor female animals are kept connected to devices to collect their urine, and this is still produced, and reimpregnated as soon as possible after the foal was birthed. I haven't seen any proof, but I imagine that these horses go off to the glue factory when their reproductive systems are reamed out by this cruel exploitation. Nowadays, most estrogen is obtained from yams in the form of estradiol. So castration was followed by penectomy, meaning his penis was removed, and a later unsatisfactory attempt at creating an artificial vagina. So Christine Jorgensen was a castrated male. As a nationally recognized personality, Christine Jorgensen flame burned with exceptional brilliance for about 30 years, dimming in the 1980s. A heavy drinker and smoker, Christine died of cancer in 1989 at the age of 62. Okay, so first of all, this is not a great life expectancy at all. And so we were talking about depression, low self-esteem, low ambitions. And what he did was basically he became a lecturer about sex change. And I'm assuming that he didn't mention the detail that he could not have female sexual arousal sensations. Okay. And then this doctor, this Danish doctor, Hamburger, Hamburger received a unique collection of letters subsequently from a considerable number of men and women who desired to change sex. He analyzed all 756 of them from 465 people, so he got multiple letters from some people, and published the results in a European endocrinology journal, Acta Endocrinologica. His correspondents wrote from all over the world, and he found that homosexuality predominated among the men and was universal among the women. It is remarkable that not one single woman admits to heterosexuality, which is the case in 22% of all of the male letter writers. I don't want this to get too long. Harry Benjamin put his own spin on George Jorgensen's homosexuality. Since the psychological status of a transsexual male is that of a female, it is natural that sex attraction centers on a male, meaning that he's attracted to a male because he thinks he's a female. But Harry Benjamin was sort of putting it backwards. He was putting the cart before the horse and having the tail wag the dog. Now, this led to uh, a researcher, Peggy Cohen-Kettenis, who is about 77 years old now and retired from the Utrecht gender clinic where she was working and promoting the idea that we need to transition kids. And this had to do with their follow up with the adult transitioners and the ones that they found who were not happy, which there it's just glossed over, but uh, of the total number of patients seen there in the previous 10 years, um, 1 in 36 females who ideated to be males had attempted suicide, and 1 in 7, this is post surgery, had attempted suicide. 1 in 7 of the males. Interesting, because the Swedish study of death records found that the rate of death by suicide among natal females who had so-called transitioned to be living as males was 40 times higher than age-matched Swedish females who also had died. This was a study of death records. Okay. Did the question they asked in their follow-up in Holland, in the Netherlands, of adult transitioners was, did medical transition at least alleviate gender dysphoria? Interestingly, there was no relationship between reported happiness and which stage of transition. So it's not that they're supremely happy 5 years after transition. And in fact, several detransitioners have said 7 to 8 years is the time of rethinking this and regret and detransition. So they speculated that an expectation effect maybe was in play. Well, I'm sure there was, because they expected they were going to be glamorous and they didn't know the truth about Christine Jorgensen. Like in all this, and I remember Nettie talking about Christine Jorgensen and Jan, formerly James Morris. Alleviations of the gender problems does not automatically lead to a happy and light-hearted life. On the contrary, so-called sex reassignment surgery can lead to new problems. Well, yes, the incontinence rate looks to be about a third. Okay, one of the explanations for the fact that they're really not that happy. Now, Paul McHugh in the 1970s in the U.S. found the same result and closed the Johns Hopkins sex change surgery center. He found that those who had opted for the surgeries were not happier than those who did not, if you follow up with them years later. And all of this early business happening in the 1950s, and I think really going all the way up until the 1970s, was with this recognition that same-sex attracted people are discriminated against and are unhappy because they feel that they can't live a normal life and they experience discrimination. And, everything has changed with being able to, find love. Of course, they did, then in the 1980s, we had the AIDS epidemic, which I believe really influenced Nettie to think that he needed to be a woman instead of realizing that perhaps he's a gay man. So Cohen-Kettenis believed that transsexuals would experience better outcomes if they started treatment before adulthood. And so this is beyond what we would call researcher bias. This is researchers, Harry Benjamin, Peggy Cohen-Kettenis, this Hamburger guy, who are seeking fame. They're seeking to become famous for being trendsetters and pioneers, without considering, will society accept someone as the opposite sex. In any case, no matter how many modifications have been done. And I think we're finding out that the answer is no, because now we're dealing with all these men in women's sports, and women are just done with it. Please do be sure to go out and see, whoops, at least I didn't spill on the computer, and see the flowers, count the butterflies. I have 3 butterfly sightings so far, a giant swallowtail and 2 eastern tiger swallowtails. Thanks to all for coming back and to finding this channel. See you next time.